Welcome everyone, and happy holidays. I know not everyone celebrates Christmas, but I really wanted to create a Christmas special for you all. To celebrate the season, I wanted to create my interpretation of a Sugar Plum Fairy from the Nutcracker ballet. I was lucky enough to find this Ever After High Justine dancer head on AliExpress. I know that she's a really rare doll, and I know that a lot of dolls from AliExpress can be pretty dodgy, but this one looks pretty legit, and I'm really lucky that I found a head. Especially here in Australia, this doll is almost impossible to find. Since I just have her head, I'll need to find her body somewhere else. I end up going with this Claudia Wolfe body from the Monster High line. I thought this combination was pretty perfect since their skin tones match really well, and the Claudia character has an older sister body type, which means that it's taller, slightly more muscular, and it has more pointed ankles, which is more appropriate for a ballet dancer. As you can see when I compare her to a Claudine doll, the Claudia doll's ankles are more bendy and more shapely, which lends itself really well to creating a ballerina footline. But more about that later on. For now, let's just start with removing her makeup with 100% pure acetone, as well as removing all her hair and painting her scalp a dark brown colour to prepare it. I prepare some yarn by mixing this brown and black colour together. If you'd like to see a more in-depth instruction about how to blend different colour yarns for doll hairs, check out my Empress video, or you can see a reel I made on my Instagram. I end up rerouting this hair so it can be pulled back into a bun. I only reroute around the hairline, leaving the centre bare. This means that when we draw the hair back into its style, it won't be too bulky and will lay nice and close to the head. The face up today will be pretty simple. I'm just going to give her clean skin, beautiful big brown eyes and wispy eyelashes. Even though she's the Sugar Plum Fairy, I'm treating her more like a human character rather than a fairy character. I think that in the ballet world there isn't really enough representation for people of colour and people of different ethnic backgrounds. So I wanted to create this project to highlight a beautiful black woman dancing and looking elegant in a Sugar Plum Fairy costume. I think Nutcracker is up there with Swan Lake as one of the most famous ballets in the world, and the Sugar Plum Fairy is really Queen of Christmas in my eyes, so I think that it's a really powerful image to have her danced by a black woman. And I really hope I can do it justice. This project is really close to my heart, and I'm so happy that I can share it with you all. As you can see, on this first layer of her face up, I've mapped out her eyes and started to add some blushing to her face, as well as adding colour to her lips. I'll also sprinkle on some Pearl X powder to give her a nice magical glow. I seal in all this work with a spray of Mr. Super Clear Matte Varnish and begin my second layer, adding in more colour and detail and depth to her eyes. I also start mapping out the shape of her eyebrows, using a black pastel on a tiny applicator. I also use my kneaded eraser to finesse the shape and make sure it's symmetrical. Once I'm happy with the shape of the eyebrow, I seal it in with another coat of MSC and then start to feather in the individual eyebrow hairs with a black pencil. While I'm in the mood of drawing fine little hairs, I also draw in some of her eyelashes. Using a white watercolour pencil, I mark in where I want the catchlights of her eyes to be. This doesn't need to be super perfect, as I'll be going in with paint later. For extra shine and glow, I brush on some more Pearl X powders in a warm and cool pink tone to create some dimension across her face. I use the warmer pink on her cheeks and nose where blushing would be, and the cooler pink for her eyeshadow. Using a wet brush, I lift some pigment off a black watercolour pencil and begin to paint in some finer details. This includes emphasising some of the individual hairs of her eyebrows and defining all of her eyelashes. I go in with white to define the catchlights and to also add some opacity to the whites of her eyes. I also very delicately go in along her waterline where the light would catch. I seal in all that work with another layer of MSC, and then I can finally add gloss to her eyes and lips, and the face up is done. I remove the fabric that was protecting her hair and style it back into a ponytail. From there, I separate some smaller areas to tie into braids. I didn't want to do just a plain and simple bun, so adding in some of these braids will create some more texture and moments of interest. Before I can finish her hairstyle, I need to make some tools to help me along the way. I take some pins and glue rhinestones to the end. This means that later on I can use the pins to hold the hairstyle in place, and the visible end will be covered by a beautiful sparkly rhinestone. It's a win-win. Once the glue is dry and the pins are ready to use, I can finish styling her hair. I twist each braid up on itself to create a bun, layering them one by one to create the final look. As I need, I add in the pins using a pair of pliers, and before I know it, the hair is done. Now back to these feet. I wanted to give my ballerina a pair of point shoes. The sculpted feet she currently has, with her toes curled back, would be called demi-point in the ballet world. This position is not very commonly performed by a girl when she's wearing point shoes, so I'm going to be giving her some new toes. Using my Dremel tool, I remove her toes and then mix up some epoxy sculpt. My plan is to create the shoes directly on the feet to create the best fit possible, so the new sculpted toes will be completely covered and I don't need them to look super fancy. They just need to be the right shape for the shoe. Once the toes are all done, I can cut out a little shoe pattern from this chocolate satin fabric. I wish I could have found a fabric that matched her skin tone a little better, but apparently brown fabric isn't all that common, which is a bit of a shame. I thought about giving traditional pink ballet shoes to her, but it just didn't feel right, so the darker chocolate shoe it was. I think in the end it actually looks pretty nice because this darker shoe matches the colour of her hair, so the overall colour palette is there. But yeah, I really wish I could have made the shoes match better. I didn't have any ribbon that would work to tie up the shoes, so I made some myself. I unfortunately lost most of the footage, but what I did was paint PVA glue directly onto the fabric and then cut it into small strips. The PVA glue acts as like a fray stop so that the fabric doesn't fray once it's cut into those small pieces. Those new ribbons then get wrapped around the foot, right before I glue on the rest of the shoe. The shoe gets folded on side to side first, kind of like a big taco. Then I glue down each side and then the heel. The last thing I glue down is the toe, pulling it nice and tight and pressing it as much as I can to keep the shape of the foot as tight and neat as possible. Ballet shoes have this tanny coloured leather piece on the bottom of the foot, which is pretty close to the colour of Warbler. So to finish off the shoe, I simply cut out these small pieces, heat them up with my heat gun, and press them on, and the stickiness of the heated Warbler will adhere themselves. For her tutu, I wanted to use different shades of red, pink and purple. Red for Christmas, pink for the land of sweets, and purple because plums are purple. And I think that all of those will work together to create a really magical colour palette. I knew I was going to be cutting out lots of petal shapes, so I wanted a fabric that wouldn't fray. And I knew I wanted lots of different colours out of the same fabric. So I literally won the jackpot when I found these velvet scrunchies. All I had to do was unpick the stitching and I would end up with these perfect rectangles of material. I draw out some little templates for me to use and then get cutting. I cut out a lot of petals for this project. I arrange them all in a circle from large to small in a mix of different colours, playing around a lot until I find a design I'm happy with. Once I'm happy, all that's left is to transfer that pattern into a skirt shape. The same as her point shoes, I really felt like the best way to create a well-fitting tutu would be to create it directly onto her body. So the first thing I do is glue on a piece of fabric to act as the basque. The basque is the piece of fabric that wraps around the dancer's hips and waist that joins the corseted style top to the tutu skirt on the bottom. With the basque securely in place, I can start gluing the petals on, kind of upside down and inside out. This is a similar idea to when you sew things together right sides in. Gluing it this way will mean that all of the stumpy ends of the petals are hidden in the final product. I continue gluing petals all the way around the waist until I create one full circle. Once that's done, I repeat that whole step again and again, circling the waist multiple times until all the petals have been used up. With all the petals glued, I'm left with this funny jellyfish kind of situation until I flip her right way around and you can see all the petals unfold. Now at this point, it's a fun skirt, but it certainly isn't a tutu, so I need to add some tulle. I choose to use this pre-pleated tulle as it'll help me to create the micro folds that you'd see in a regular tutu but to this small doll scale. Regular tutus don't use pleats like this, but they use gathering, and this is the best way to replicate that in miniature. I use a similar process that I did with the petals, gluing the tulle on upside down so that the glue will be hidden in the final outfit. With all the layers of tulle glued on, I end up with a different funny looking jellyfish thing, and then I can flip it out to reveal the final skirt. The shape of the skirt is not quite right just yet, so I create this little contraption out of cardboard and use it to try and flatten out the tutu as much as possible. I let gravity do a lot of work, and once I'm happy with how it looks, I use hairspray. I use a lot of hairspray to try and hold the final tutu shape. I'm left with something like this, which is super flat and stiff, which is amazing. Probably a little too flat and stiff, but I let it just stand by itself for a couple of days and it ended up with the perfect tutu shape. Now all that's left to do is create the bodice. I cut a piece of velvet into a bodice shape. The fabric has quite a bit of stretch to it, so I don't have to sew any darts in, which is great. I can then go ahead and glue the bodice straight to the doll's body. I cut out some extra mini versions of the velvet petals and used them to decorate the bodice. And it wouldn't be a Mr. Super Custom Christmas without some rhinestones. And with that, she's all done. I want to thank you all who have supported me this year. Your comments, likes and views mean so much to me, and I love sharing my art with all of you. I hope you have a peaceful holiday period and that 2022 treats you well. Without further ado, I present my Sugar Plum Fairy. Thank you so much for watching. As always, your support means the world to me. Make sure to like the video if you like it, and leave a comment below. I read every single comment. Subscribe if you want to see more of my content, and I'll see you next time. Have an awesome day.